Hi, my name is Zachary Maneck. I'm a sophomore accounting major here at the Smith School of Business at the University of Maryland, and I'm so excited today to get to talk to Isa Farhat about his accounting journey. Isa, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Zach.
Why don't we start with if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, local kid. Grew up in Wheaton, Maryland. Came to the University of Maryland not too far from home. Came here, worked my way through college with a number of different jobs, but first in my family to ever go to college, and graduated in 1996, and now I'm a partner at Deloitte in the audit and assurance practice.
That's awesome. Can you tell me a little bit about why you chose the accounting major here at Smith?
Yeah, so I wasn't an accounting major when I started at Maryland. I was actually an architecture major. I was blown away by architecture, still am. It's kind of a hobby of mine. Decided that I wanted to be an architecture major. Studied architecture in high school. But what I found was I started at Maryland at the time that we came out of a recession, and more importantly, as it related to my architecture or contemplated architecture degree, was we had a building recession. So no commercial real estate was being built. There was not a lot of funding for commercial real estate. There was a commercial real estate recession effectively, and I didn't see much of a payback. Again, I worked my way through school, wanted something that was going to give me stability in a career, that was going to give me career longevity. So I started asking around in my dorm over at Hagerstown Hall, some friends, what were they majoring in? And interestingly enough, there were a lot of accounting majors. So I gave it a really, really deep look.
Oh, that's awesome. And why don't we talk a little bit about some of the opportunities you used within the Smith School and leverage to get to the position you're at, obviously as a partner at Deloitte.
Yeah, so I have to acknowledge that I wouldn't be here today, and I tell people this all the time, if it wasn't for one associate dean that I met when I was at Maryland, Joe Mattingly, who was an associate dean. I may get this wrong. I think he was the assistant dean for undergraduate studies here at the Smith School. I made an appointment to meet with him, told him that I wanted to be an accounting major. He asked me to take some principles of accounting classes and then come back and see him the next semester if I had done well in those classes. And I did that. He took a chance on me. He gave me the opportunity to take some accounting courses in my pursuit of being admitted to the Smith School, because being in architecture, I was outside of the Smith School. So I didn't come here as a business school major. And I did well, came back and saw him, and I really enjoyed accounting. I thought that it was a real tangible and useful major for a career in business.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And obviously after your time at University of Maryland, I imagine you got your CPA license?
I did.
Can you talk a little bit about the value that the CPA license provided you?
Yeah, I tell students this all the time. Being a CPA puts you in a position of trust. And I think that having a CPA license is much like having the license to practice law, much like having the license to practice medicine. It puts you in a profession, or gives you the access to a profession that puts you in a position of public trust. And to me, that's extremely important. And I, there were, and still are, there's a lot of value that's placed on your ability to go get a professional license and maintain a professional license. And there are a lot of opportunities and door openers, things that you couldn't do. You couldn't practice in public accounting unless you were a licensed CPA. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of door openers that are created by having a CPA license.
That's awesome. And so pivoting slightly, why don't we talk a little bit about your goals coming out of Smith School and how they've evolved today?
Yeah. So going back to when I said that I was an architecture major coming into school, when I came out of school as a graduate from the accounting program, and as I was looking at potential jobs and interviewing with firms, when I started my career in accounting, I knew immediately that I wanted to be an audit partner. I knew it. I knew it to my core. I knew I was going to get there. And when I was talking to friends, out after work, socializing with them, that's what I told them.
That's awesome. And what about as you evolve today? How you've achieved that goal? You came out as a partner of Deloitte. What are some of your goals now?
Well, it's not an end destination. Mm-hmm. We always tell people, and I always tell people that you make it to partner, and then your career starts anew. And there's a number of different things that I see, complexities in the business world, working with a diverse set of clients, working with world-class organizations, being involved in, like I said, being involved in a position of trust and working with my clients through very complex issues is something that supercharges me every day.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And going back to when you came out and you had that initial goal to be a partner of, can you talk a little bit about your first role within Deloitte and how you learned from that experience?
Yeah, I got to see a variety of clients, home builders and financial services organizations and companies that were in government contracting. When I started, well, let me back up for a second. There were kids that graduated from Maryland at the time that I graduated that went into tax practices, or they went into audit practices, and that was business and how we recruit from Maryland has changed over time, but the majority of my friends were either going to start their career in public accounting, and furthermore, they were going to start their career in either the tax practice or they were going to start in the audit practice. I started in the audit practice. I got exposure to a wide variety of companies, like I said, from home building to financial services to government contracting. And it was interesting to see things from a different lens, being at client sites, working in teams, doing things that I had not done before. Much of my studies were individual studies. We had some team studies, but it was a very different and very fast-paced career after I left Maryland.
Mm-hmm. And so you already touched about it a little bit in terms of tax versus audit, but can you talk a little bit more about what audit gives you and why you chose it initially?
I think audit puts you in a place that you can see a number of different aspects of a company's business. Audit puts you in a position to interface with a number of different key stakeholders from across these great organizations. Interface with not only the accounting department but the finance departments that are embedded inside of the organizations. Interface with people from financial planning and analysis. Interface with people from a company's legal organization. Interface with professionals that work in a company's HR organization. So I think you have a multifaceted and multidimensional view of companies from the vantage point of being an auditor.
Mm-hmm. And within your Deloitte tenure, is it true that you took 2 years with the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission?
I was, yep. I worked for 2 years with the SEC.
Can you talk a little bit about what that role was and what that entailed?
Well, it's a regulatory role. So it gave me the ability to see the profession from a regulator's perspective. Mm-hmm. It was valuable, I think, to my career in public accounting. I got to acquire, interesting set of skills, being seeing the profession from a regulator's vantage point. It was a great 2 years. I think that it only helped me become a better auditor and a better professional in public accounting.
That's great. And then afterwards, you chose to go back to Deloitte. Is that correct?
I did, yeah.
Can you talk a little about why you continued with a company like Deloitte, a large, one of the big four accounting companies?
Deloitte's been sort of a home for me, and has created a family away from the family that I was born with, and Deloitte's been a great nurturing organization for me. I've learned a tremendous amount. I remember one of my former mentors, a partner that was in our McLean office, who actually started his career with the SEC and then came to Deloitte after being at the SEC. The learning curve is very steep when you start your career, and I enjoyed that steep learning curve. And the learning that you get in a profession like public accounting is, to me, has kept me so stimulated and so energized. So one of the reasons, or the primary reason that I came back, was the connections that I made, the family that was created inside of Deloitte over the years. Mm-hmm. And you pair that with the stimulating and fast-paced environment that you have, seeing many different things from many different vantage points was very attractive to me.
That's awesome. And then what makes you excited, just generally, what makes you excited to go to work every day as an accountant? Because there's the general, accountants are boring, and what do you say to that?
Accountants are not boring, I'll tell you that. But I will say, at least in the audit and assurance practice, we work in teams, and I love that team environment. I love the fact that, the people that sit next to me, I can teach and mentor, but I can also learn from the people who work for me. Mm-hmm. It's a great environment. You get very close to people, and you create this, we create these trusting relationships between our professionals at Deloitte. I know that I can rely on somebody. They can rely on me. I tend to gravitate towards mentoring, and I love mentoring our young professionals. They're the future of the profession. They're the future of Deloitte. So I would say that the social aspect of working in teams is a big component of it. But just back to what I said about why I came back to the firm, it's you pair that all together with all the different things that you see with your clients and assisting clients and providing them advice, or being on the on the side of being an auditor. There's a number of different things that we do for different types of clients, and I think that's unmatched in the type of career satisfaction that, at least from my vantage point, somebody else could debate me that they love their career more than I love my career, but this was a perfect fit for me.
That's awesome. One question we want to leave everyone with is just if you have any final pieces of advice for someone like myself who's pursuing an accounting degree.
Yeah, I think it's been an extremely rewarding career. The piece of advice that I would give you is, and what kind of accelerated me up the learning curve, is experiential learning. Get immersed in that. We talked a lot today at the advisory board meeting about experiential learning. Having that hands-on, real life scenarios where you tackle cases that are real life just made everything click for me. So if I were providing any piece of advice to you, is start getting involved in experiential learning. Embrace that. Embrace the things that Smith is going to teach you, like how do I apply robotic process automation in accounting, or how do I learn to leverage different types of tools like analytics in interpreting the data in accounting. embrace those learning experiences, because that will be the catalyst of bringing you up the learning curve when you graduate and get into your profession outside of Smith.
Could you please tell us some interesting or funny stories from your career in accounting?
Yeah, interesting and funny. I would say I've gotten to work in a lot of different locations during my career at the firm. I've served international clients that took me to London and Amsterdam and Germany, and that was just incredibly rewarding to work with my colleagues abroad. I've worked on the West Coast, and I've worked in New York City, which was incredibly rewarding to have the experiences of working in big cities and working across the country. The variety of clients that I've worked on, worked in everything from, as I said, financial services to government contracting, and I've seen some, really great manufacturing operations as I've, worked. The one great thing that we get as auditors is you have to really deeply understand the business that you're auditing. And in the pursuit of understanding the business that you're auditing, you get to go out and you get to visit the business's operations. So seeing some of these, large, Fortune 100 publicly traded companies that I've served, you get to see their operations and you get to understand, how they do what they do. And it's incredibly gratifying to see some of the things, some of the products that are being produced by our clients, some of the great iconic products, some of the great services that are associated with these great companies. So, I guess I would say not so much funny, but more interesting that, I've worked all over the world. I've served a variety of different clients in different industries, and I've gotten to collaborate with people that have different perspectives than me, and that can teach me every day. So again, it's been a really fun experience.
Thank you for taking the time to talk with me and learning about your accounting journey.
Absolutely. Great talking to you, Zach.